Hi, I'm Anthony, and I'm on a 1,000 week journey to upgrade life, my life, and the lives of others. This is a weekly summary that I've decided to do in addition to the regular upgrade installments on this project. And the idea is just to check in on a weekly basis and give a sense of the progress that's taking place in a number of the key areas that I'm profiling on this channel. So I'm down here in the city that I live in, just chilling out on a Sunday afternoon, and I've decided to make Sunday the end of a given week. So I'll just start on Monday, end on Sunday. So anyway, this is the end of the very first week, and you got to start somewhere, and that's where I am today. I originally was going to start, I believe, on the 3rd or 4th of the year, that first Monday, but I started thinking through more of the logistics of what I wanted to do with this channel and with my overall project, with the whole concept of upgrading. And I'm glad I spent a couple additional weeks thinking through some things instead of just jumping into it. The cool thing is that the project itself is a 1,000-week project, and that, somewhat interestingly, will end right around the same week of my 70th birthday. So it's a little short of 20 years. It's like 19 years and I don't know, 10 weeks or 20 weeks or something like that. So it will be within probably 14 days of my 70th birthday, which is interesting because my dad just turned 70 this last week. So it's about a generational gap that I'll use to profile my life. Well, my life. Why should I profile my life? It's a project that I've been kicking around for a number of years, and I've actually had a few false starts where I thought, well, let's try this or let's try this, and I've never found really the right format or framing that I felt comfortable with. But I do this time with this project, and it's something that I plan to continue. And part of it is I don't plan to pitch myself as an expert. In fact, I almost called myself the human case study throughout this project, basically saying that I was subjecting myself to a number of tests to see how well I would do to upgrade a number of key elements in my life. And some of those elements are, a key one would be intellectual, just in terms of understanding the world and having a better sense of this whole life experience and situating myself within the flow of human history. One of the key elements of the intellectual aspect is I really want to read through Will and Ariel Durant's 11-volume series on the history of civilization. It's over 20 years. It's not that big of a deal. In fact, you could break all of their chapters down into smaller, maybe the books into chapters, and then there are sections that are, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages long. And if I just do one of those small sections, do a couple of those, about 2.5 of those every week, I will get through the entire 11-volume series. So I had some reservations about whether I should do Will and Ariel Durant. The first volume was published in 1935. It was entitled Our Oriental Heritage, and I did a video on that this week where I talked about how different their timetable and their chronology is compared to what contemporary scholars are saying regarding what dynasty existed, what kingdom existed, etc. I've decided to go ahead and go with Will and Ariel Durant anyway because of the wonderful story they tell about history. So I will rely on other sources for specific dates. I'll rely on Will and Ariel Durant, among other sources, just to give me a sense of what happened. And I'm very interested in connecting the dots between what happened, between what people were thinking in terms of philosophy, in terms of their theology, how that impacted culture, how that gave rise to technology, how the rise of technology also influenced those elements. So that'll be a very regular theme that I revisit here throughout the project. So there's the intellectual part, and I'll continue to read other works. I've got Moby Dick on the line to read, which I've never read, and just finished reading George Orwell's 1984 prior to the Capitol insurrection and all that stuff that came about before it was popular on the far right in terms of recent talking points. So I'll probably do an episode about that. I'm currently reading Lord of the Flies. I'm about halfway through that and getting to what I understand is the best part of that book, at least according to Stephen King, who couldn't put that second part of the book down once he got there. So there's the intellectual part of life. Another part that I'm very fascinated with is cooking, food and drink. And I'm not sure how I'm going to tackle that as part of this project. I'm not a chef. I'm nowhere close to being trained classically or otherwise. And I really don't want to put in a lot of time and energy into creating cooking programs because that's just not what I'm about. But I do want to cook, and I'm getting pretty good at it. So I want something, a format that is very concise, that maybe gives some of the steps, but I can talk a little bit about what I happen to be making. And I might make a video today on making marsala chai, which I had over in India. Just love, you can get it at Starbucks here as well. But I want to make my own for the first time. Let's see, what else do we got here? If it's too windy out here, let me just check my mic. I put the microphone on the far side of me, so I've partially blocked it. But even if the audio is bad, I'm going with it anyway, because this is a series about upgrading, and we can see the lessons that I learned. And that's actually kind of a cool metaphor, because my goal is to make incremental improvement across multiple areas over the next 20 years. I really like the Japanese concept of Kaizen, which is the notion of making small incremental improvements on a consistent basis. You don't have to make a wild jump, you just get a little bit better each time. And given that I'm doing this over a 20-year project, I think I should be kind of a cool person, I hope, by the time I reach the age of 70. Speaking of other categories, in addition to the intellectual side, food and drink, there's a social category. And that's an area that I definitely need to jumpstart. I moved here to Fort Worth, Texas in 2013. Prior to that, I had been a full-time faculty member at a university for 13 years. And then prior to that, when I was earning my PhD, I was, again, teaching full-time, was always plugged into organizational settings. When I came here, I started my own small business and found that I tend to be somebody on the outside given what I do in photography and visual productions. What I do tends to be on the fringes, shooting in towards whatever is happening. And it's been difficult to really get inside groups. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to do that. It's hard to do that when you're not really already tied in with a bunch of social connections. So I'm going to tell the story of that, and that's going to be one of the more difficult upgrades for me. My personality of the past has been an INTJ, or maybe it was an INTP. So that introvert side of me is quite strong. So we've got the intellectual, we've got the food and drink, we've got the social. There's also an element of developing professional skills that I'll focus on as well. And in particular, regarding my business here in Fort Worth, that involves photography, it involves videography. I've been doing photography since, I think, 2007, and have shot a number of weddings and senior portraits and all that good stuff. And more recently, I've begun to explore videography. And so that's still a fairly new element to me. I'm hoping that this video, for example, is in focus. So we'll see if it is or isn't. So the professional side, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with working on the computer, editing images, editing videos, creating a marketing interface that's more effective in terms of running a small business. Those are other elements where I'll continue to try to make small incremental improvements. One other element is fashion. And I've gotten into high quality men's shoes about the last 10 years and sell some of that on eBay, as I did a video about that here earlier this week. But man, with COVID, I haven't been out really to any social functions since last March, even as a photographer. So I'm looking to upgrade that style and fashion game. Part of that for me is also going to be upgrading the fitness game so that it goes in conjunction and creates the look that I want. So those are just some of the elements that I'm going to continue to feature here on this program. So what I might do eventually is make this weekly series live, and I can do that mobilely once I reach the point of having 1,000 subscribers to this channel. So if you just happen to be watching this and come across this, I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. That will help me be able to do mobile explorations as well as just doing a weekly summary. I would love to take off with the camera and just go places here in North Texas and really throughout the country and maybe throughout the world as well. So anyway, that's it for a real quick weekly summary on week 1 of the 1,000-week journey. And I'm Anthony, and keep upgrading. Thanks.